Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take the sources you send our way, dig into them, and pull out the key ideas.
Yeah, what's really got people thinking?
Exactly. And today we're diving into something huge, the really intricate connection between language and identity. We've got some great YouTube transcripts you shared looking at this from all sorts of angles.
It's a really fascinating mix. We've got philosophy with Derrida, education stuff from Cummins, some broader sociolinguistics,
Right.
and then Grant's more personal sort of political take.
So our mission today is, well, to really get a handle on how language shapes us,
Yeah,
who we are, our communities, how we experience things. We might even find some surprising connections.
definitely should.
Okay, let's get into it. First up, Jacques Derrida. He had some pretty deep thoughts on language and identity.
Yeah, and his background is super important here. He was a French-Algerian Jew, felt a bit disconnected from his Jewish roots, grew up hearing Arabic and Berber, but under French colonial rule. So language and belonging were complicated for him right from the start.
And that led him to this paradox, right? We never speak our own language, and we only ever speak one language. What's going on there? It sounds contradictory.
It does, yeah.
Right.
So he knew there were tons of languages, obviously, but he was looking at how we often feel like we have one main language.
Okay.
But even that language, the one we feel closest to, it never just belongs to us. It's always like a shared thing, a system bigger than any one person.
Yeah, I see. So even your mother tongue isn't truly yours alone.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It challenges that whole idea of a fixed singular language identity.
And Derrida himself, with French, which was basically his only language for navigating the world, he didn't feel totally comfortable, totally at home in it.
Right. For a couple of reasons. First, he thought fully identifying with a language meant like a complete fusion of yourself in that identity.
Mm.
And given his background, French, Algerian, Jewish, that kind of neat fusion just wasn't his experience. Plus, he kind of believed language itself is always limited. It can't ever fully contain everything about who someone is.
So the idea that just because you speak French, you perfectly embody Frenchness, he'd say that's too simple.
Exactly. Way too simple. And that connects to his critique of what's called ethno-linguistic communitarianism.
Okay, what's that?
It's the idea that sharing a language automatically creates this like closed-off, unified ethnic group. You have to speak our way to be one of us.
Right.
Derrida argued against that. He said no language is truly self-contained. They're always mixing, interacting.
Okay, but here's the twist I find fascinating. Even though he's known for deconstruction, questioning fixed ideas, right?
Yeah, precisely. Pulling apart those assumptions.
He apparently had this, intense love for pure French. How does that fit? It seems like a total contradiction.
It really does seem that way. He even admitted he had this shameful but intractable intolerance, his words, for French, that wasn't, perfect in his eyes. He actually felt bad about his own imperfections in French.
Wow. So how do you square that circle? Critiquing purity but wanting it in French.
It's a real tension in his thought. Maybe having French wasn't like having a mother tongue in that warm, fuzzy origin story kind of way for him.
Okay.
He said he felt lost outside the French language. But maybe his devotion to its secret purity, as he put it, was his kind of weird way of honoring the uniqueness of all languages, the idea that they can't be perfectly translated, that each has its own spirit.
So it wasn't about French being better.
No, not necessarily superior. It was more about exploring that messy relationship between identity, ethnic, national, whatever, and the language we happen to speak, especially when it feels like the language of the other, like in colonial situations.
And he even suggested that feeling like a language is truly ours is maybe an illusion?
Yeah, sort of. He saw language as a kind of gift from somewhere beyond any single group, like its source is transcendent. So no community can claim, total ownership or autonomous origin. There's always something bigger, something shared built into language itself.
Gotcha. Now, people sometimes misunderstand Derrida, right, thinking he believed everything is just language.
Yeah, that's a common oversimplification.
Yeah.
It wasn't about reducing reality to language. He was more interested in the actual experience of having a language and what that does to our sense of self, our identity, how we belong.
Okay, that helps clarify things. So, moving from that very philosophical angle, let's switch gears to education with Jim Cummins. He looks at kids starting school who speak a language different from the main one used there.
Right. And Cummins really stresses that a child's home language isn't just, how they ask for things. It's deeply tied to their identity, their personal history, everything they've learned already. He calls it their linguistic capital.
Linguistic capital, I like that.
It's crucial because if schools ignore or worse, devalue that capital.
It sends a bad message.
A really damaging one. It basically tells the student what you already know and who you are doesn't really count here. They might start seeing themselves only through the lens of what they lack in the school language.
Oof, so they start feeling like, I don't know, problem learners or something.
Exactly. Like incompetent second language learners. And that can just crush their self-esteem. It really becomes about how they negotiate their identity in that classroom space.
And if teachers aren't tuned in to this language identity link,
They can unintentionally do real harm. Cummins contrasts this deficit view, this student needs fixing because their language is wrong, with a positive one,
which is,
seeing these multilingual kids for what they are. Students with diverse experiences, intelligence, often incredible resilience. Focusing only on a supposed deficiency misses all their strengths.
and kids can pick up on those negative teacher expectations, can't they? Even subtle ones.
Tragically, yes. They can internalize it, start believing they are less capable or that their home language is a hindrance, and that can genuinely lower their ambitions for school and beyond.
So it's vital for teachers to get this.
Absolutely. Understanding how deeply language is tied to a student's sense of self and their future prospects is key.
So what should teachers be doing instead? What's the better approach?
Cummins argues teachers need to actively tell students and their parents that being multilingual is a huge plus. It's an intellectual achievement to be proud of, something to build on, not hide.
And communicate that to parents, too, because maybe they worry it'll interfere with learning the main language.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Parents need reassurance and information about the benefits, cognitive, cultural, social, of keeping that home language strong.
Are there examples of schools doing this well?
Oh, definitely. Schools that say encourage using home languages for projects, maybe use dual language books, celebrate multilingualism openly.
Yeah.
They tend to see much better results. Kids feel seen, valued. They develop positive attitudes towards their heritage, get curious about it. The whole school feels more vibrant, more inclusive. Happier kids, happier teachers, really.
It just makes intuitive sense, doesn't it? Okay, let's zoom out again. Let's talk sociolinguistics, how language works in society generally, and how it connects to social identity.
Right. So sociolinguistics tells us language isn't just for passing information. It actively shapes how we see the world. And how we use language basically defines who we are in different contexts.
It's more than just words and grammar.
Oh, much more. It's your accent, your word choices, even which language you choose to speak when. All signals about identity.
And identity itself isn't just one fixed thing from this perspective.
Not at all. Sociolinguists see identity as dynamic, multi-layered. We all juggle multiple identities, right? Based on gender, ethnicity, job, age, hobbies.
Yeah.
And our language often shifts subtly depending on which identity feels most relevant in that moment, who we're talking to.
Yeah, I mean, the way I talk to my family is definitely not how I talk in a professional setting.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of code switching.
Ah, right, code switching.
Yeah, shifting between languages or dialects or even just styles of speaking.
Yeah.
It's a really common way we navigate our different social roles and identities. Show solidarity with a group, adapt to the situation.
Like maybe speaking one language at home, another at work if you're bilingual.
Totally. Or even just shifting your level of formality.
But it's not always a free choice, is it? Sometimes people feel they have to switch.
That's a really important point. Yes. Sometimes code switching isn't about expressing identity. It's about survival or avoiding prejudice, feeling pressured to change how you speak to fit in or not be discriminated against.
And that ties into language and power, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Historically, think about colonial powers imposing their language, pushing down indigenous languages. That's language as a tool of control.
And those dynamics still exist.
For sure. Look at global business or higher education. Certain languages, often English, just have more status, more power.
What about language and gender? How does that fit in?
Well, societal ideas about gender roles can definitely show up in language. Research has looked at things like politeness strategies, maybe how often people use tag questions, even voice pitch, though that's complex and varies culturally. But crucially, it's not just about a male-female binary. Language is vital for non-binary and trans folks to affirm their identities, especially through things like pronouns and choosing speech styles that feel authentic.
Right. Which makes using the right pronouns so important. It's basic respect.
It's fundamental. Pronouns reflect identity. Using the wrong ones is invalidating, plain and simple. It's about acknowledging who someone is.
Definitely. And then there's the link between language and ethnicity. That often feels really strong.
Incredibly strong. For many ethnic groups, their heritage language or specific community dialect is key for cultural continuity. maintaining traditions, that sense of shared identity.
But some dialects get unfairly judged, right?
Sadly, yes. Things like African American Vernacular English or AAV or different Creoles, they're often stigmatized.
Yeah.
But linguistically, they're perfectly valid, rule-governed, expressive language systems with rich histories. That prejudice is social, not linguistic.
Got it. And nations often define themselves by language, too.
Often, yeah. Think France or Japan. The language feels central to national identity.
Yeah.
But then you have places like Switzerland or India, super multilingual.
Right.
Their national identity is more complex, maybe layered. Language might signal regional or ethnic identity within the nation.
You mentioned linguistic landscapes earlier. What's that about?
That's basically the language you can see in public spaces. Street signs, ads, shop names, graffiti.
Okay.
What languages are used, how prominently. What's missing. It tells you a lot about who lives there, which groups have influence, the social hierarchy. Walking through a neighborhood with signs in 3 different languages tells a different story than one where everything's in just one.
It's like a visual map of the community's linguistic identity.
Exactly. And it reinforces that language and identity aren't fixed. They're always changing, influenced by everything from our own lives to technology. Young people especially are always creating new ways to express identity through language.
This is all weaving together really nicely. Okay, let's bring in Malaka Grant's perspective now. She makes this really striking argument that language shapes identity more than race does, at least in some contexts.
Yeah, it's a powerful argument, grounded in her experience as a Black American living in South Africa. She mentions this conversation with an older Indian woman, Roxana, and Roxana basically said, here in South Africa, it's more about what language you speak than what race you are. That really struck Grant because in the U.S., race is so often the primary identity category.
She talks about those like official forms in the U.S. with their rigid, sometimes offensive racial boxes.
Right, and how American identity often involves those hyphens, African American, Italian American, but the common thread is usually American English.
Whereas in South Africa, with Zulu, Xhosa, English, Afrikaans, language becomes a much clearer dividing line or connecting line.
Exactly. It's a key marker for who's in and who's out of different groups. And for Grant, being a writer, language is obviously central to her work and identity. She even shares this story about getting angry emails for featuring an African-speaking colored woman on her blog.
Wow.
It just shows how charged that connection between language, race, and identity is there.
And Africans itself has such a complicated history with apartheid.
Hugely complicated. It's associated with the oppressor state for many. But as Grant points out, for its native speakers, it's their language, part of their identity, their heritage. It developed from Dutch dialects, but has unique roots too. She mentions the word cameel perd for a giraffe, literally camel horse.
So her point is language itself isn't good or bad.
Exactly. It's neutral. It's how people use it for oppression, for connection, for kindness, for violence. She quotes Rita Mae Brown, "Language is the roadmap of a culture."
That's a great quote.
Isn't it? Grant then looks back historically. The Tower of Babel's story language dividing people. And the Hebrew word shibboleth.
Shibboleth.
Yeah, where just mispronouncing one sound could get you killed if you were from the wrong group trying to cross a border. Language as a literal life or death identifier, more crucial than how you looked.
That's intense.
And she connects it to modern times. Colonial powers suppressing native languages, like the attempt to force Africans in black schools in South Africa, leading to the Soweto uprisings.
Right.
And how the apartheid government specifically used language favoring Africans and English speakers in the colored community to engineer social divisions and control resources. Hard-coding inequality through language policy.
She gives other examples too, right? British suppression in Ireland and Wales.
Yeah.
Pushing English in the U.S.
Yeah, trying to enforce linguistic unity often meant crushing other languages. French in Louisiana, kids punished for speaking home languages in Ghana. The impact of losing your language like that is massive.
Huge. Affects cultural identity, connection to history.
Right. Like Grant asks, if language is the roadmap and yours is taken away, whose roadmap will they use?
But she also gives a counterexample about English being seen differently by some.
Yes, really important. The Dalit community in India facing caste oppression. For many of them, learning English is seen as a path to liberation, a tool for social mobility, escaping that discrimination. She references B.R. Ambedkar calling English the milk of the lioness, something powerful that can nourish and strengthen.
So language can be both a tool of oppression and a tool of liberation.
Depending entirely on the context and who's wielding it.
Yeah.
Grant even brings in her own DNA results, showing Irish ancestry alongside being identified as Black. It just highlights the complexity, the inadequacy of simple boxes for either race or language.
Yeah, it's messy.
Super messy. She mentions recent examples from South African pop culture, too. Singers and personalities whose identity gets publicly debated based on their language and how people perceive their race.
And she brings up Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, this famous quote about how speaking to someone in their own language goes to their heart. It emphasizes that deep, almost spiritual connection we have through language.
So Grant's final point is that these language hierarchies we see, they're man-made.
Entirely human constructs. Tools for division, for ranking people. Her hope is for a future where all languages and the identities they carry are respected. She thinks it's possible if we just appreciate the marvel of language itself.
And she leaves us with a call to action.
Yeah, a little experiment.
Yeah.
Try speaking to someone in what you sense is their heart language, maybe their native tongue, maybe just a way of communicating that resonates, and see how it changes the interaction.
Wow. Okay. This has been a lot to unpack. Language is clearly doing so much more than just letting us talk to each other. It's personal, it's social, it's political, historical.
Absolutely. From Derrida grappling with belonging to Cummins on kids' self-worth in schools, the sociolinguistics of group identity and power, and Grant's powerful case for language shaping who we are.
Yeah.
It's all deeply interwoven.
It really makes you think about your own relationship with language, doesn't it? How it shapes your sense of self, who you connect with, how you see others. So building on that challenge from Malaka Grant, here's something for you, the listener, to think about. How could consciously trying to connect with someone through their language of the heart, whatever that means in the moment, change how you understand them? How might it help you see beyond surface labels and connect on a deeper level? Definitely something worth pondering after we wrap up here.